All right, everyone, welcome back. Thank you for taking a quick break, and we are appreciative of you all taking the time to stay with us for our keynote speaker. I'm going to invite onto the stage to join me right now, Eve Barlow. Eve, come on down.
Hey. Hello? Hello.
Hi, Eve. How are you?
I'm good. I was zooming in and out of there for a minute.
Yes, I apologize. So let me just properly introduce you if I can. Eve Barlow is an LA-based music and pop culture journalist. She is former deputy editor of the NME and currently contributes to New York Magazine, The Guardian, Billboard, LA Times, Pitchfork, and GQ, among other publications. Great, that's pretty awesome, actually. And then I'm reading it again and again. She is also an outspoken voice on Jewish identity and Zionism and fighting anti-Semitism on social media. Eva has written for Tablet on the topic and has also been awarded an Allgemeiner's Top 100 People Positively Influencing Jewish Life in both 2020 and 2021 for her efforts. So Eve, welcome to Alums for Campus Fairness's third ever conference and our second virtual. So welcome.
Thanks, Abby. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, maybe we can start off by you telling us a little bit about yourself and how you really got the call to fight anti-Semitism. Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today and your prominence within the Jewish community.
Sure. I grew up in a really like close-knit Glaswegian, Scottish Jewish community, and my identity was really strongly instilled in that environment. It was a very kind of Orthodox, traditional leaning environment, and I grew up with a real sense of what it meant to have a connection to Israel as a Jew. I was very fortunate to spend a lot of time in Israel as a child, and I just had a very traditional setup. We did Shabbat dinner every Friday night. I went to shul most Saturdays. I went for all the high holy days. I also went to a Jewish elementary school, which was the only one in Scotland. I learned to speak Hebrew from a young age. And, so I was really instilled with a lot of Judaism and a lot of Yiddishkeit. And I think the call came at different inferences in my life, but I was always working in Jewish youth groups and involved in Jewish life. When I went to university, I was still involved in Jewish life. And I would say that the quietest time for me was when I kind of entered the young professional stage of my life, and I was progressing my career, and I didn't have as much time to imbue myself in Jewish social circles. However, really the call came back to me in a very profoundly strong way during the Corbyn years in the UK, mainly because at that point in time, I was at the helm, as you've sort of recalled in my bio there as my introduction. I was at the helm of music journalism, specifically rock and roll and indie music journalism and new music journalism at that point in time. And at that point in time, societally, music journalism had become a lot more politicized, and just music and art and culture in general had become a lot more politicized after, I would say, probably a decade or so of total apathy and a lot of complaining about artists not necessarily being political enough. Suddenly it had swung in the other direction, and artists were becoming extremely political, and everything was actually more politics first and art second, and everything was couched in a narrative of prefixes before you were sold on a song or a film or a piece of art. It would be, this is coming at you from a progressive, LGBTQ plus, BIPOC, all of these. And I'm not to say that the increased visibility and proliferation of equality in those facets wasn't important. It was, but suffice to say, it became a lot more politicized than it had been. And I found myself in this really unique position whereby I had a cultivated audience that were vastly skewed to the left, if not the far left, actually. And I had fought at the forefront of all of those battles for years. I was responsible for fighting to diversify the cover mount at NME so that it wasn't always a middle-aged white man that was on the cover of the magazine. I had arguments with festival bookers and organizers about the lack of females represented at the tops of festival lineups, despite the wealth of female talent that existed. I was really working very hard behind the scenes of the Me Too movement and making sure that those stories were reaching mainstream media during that time when I was freelancing. And I also did a huge amount in pop culture journalism to increase visibility for the LGBTQ plus community. So when Corbynism started and I saw all of my friends, particularly in the music industry, many of them bands who I had written about since before anyone knew about them, who weren't just voicing support for Jeremy Corbyn's campaign, but who were actual active faces of the campaign and who were appearing on TV spots or, really, they were really embroiled and enmeshed in Corbynism in the UK. I realized that I cannot continue to fight for other multitudes of my identity. I can't continue to do that at the behest of not standing up for myself as a Jew. But what was even more painful to me was that I knew that I was part of a very loud chorus when it came to all of those other fights. But for mine, I felt as though I was the only person in my immediate sort of, in my immediate surroundings, in my community, who cared and who was affected by Corbynism in a real way. And that's when I properly got the call to do this on a daily basis and to really make noise, no matter the cost, because I just saw this profound hypocrisy, this profound double standard. And I think at the beginning, I naively thought that I would be able to capitalize on that audience that I had and actually shift some hearts and minds. And it wasn't naive, because at the end of it, I have actually managed to have difficult conversations with certain people who I thought wouldn't be convinced otherwise. And I've also been able to, I've also created allies out of people I would never have imagined would have been allies. But it's come at a huge cost as well. And I think I was perhaps not naive about that, but I was just unconscious of that at the time. I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about the desperation to use my voice and to use as much integrity when it came to having conversations about Jewish identity as I used anything to do with the fact that I'm part of the LGBTQ plus community or that I'm a feminist.
Really interesting. So I would assume that your industry kind of reacted negatively in your activism. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I would say yes, pockets extremely negatively, pockets just dumbfounded, surprised, misunderstanding. A lot of people who totally missed the mark. I mean, to this day, I continue to have extremely difficult, hurtful, heartbreaking conversations with people that I've had a relationship with for so long, for half of my adult life, in whose eyes I had never, stepped a foot wrong until I started telling people I was a Zionist. Never a complaint about my professionalism, about my taste in music, about my decorum around people or my leadership skills, never a complaint about anything. But suddenly I'm persona non grata because I'm making a noise that not only nobody else is making, but nobody really understands. And the fascinating thing is the lack of will to try to understand. That's the thing that is the most heartbreaking. That's when you kind of know that once you scratch the surface, what you're really seeing is some deep-seated prejudice. Because why wouldn't you want to ask a Jew why they're upset about something when you're very comfortable asking a black or brown person about what happened with George Floyd in this country, for example, or you're very comfortable asking an array of LGBTQ plus people, or what they think about the trans debate right now. It's not lost on me that there doesn't seem to be as much space offered to Jewish people, or the Jewish people who are making the sounds that we're making and ringing the alarm, to actually share and educate. And we see that across the spectrum. We see that in social environments. We see that in DEI, at a corporate level. We're seeing it in politics. We see it everywhere, and we have to just keep addressing it.
For sure, I totally agree. I'm curious. I know that you're very active on social media. We have a lot of followers, a lot of interactions and whatnot. What's it like when it comes to social media and how it relates to your activism? Are you seeing like more anti-Zionism? You use the Z word, Zionism, which is many times seen as controversial or not okay. And obviously that's a word that we want to take back and be proud of. I think we're all proud to be Zionists here, certainly on this conference and beyond. What is what's it like for you on social media, and how do you deal with that online hate maybe that you experience?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably one of the most hated Zionists on the internet. That is something that I have to kind of compartmentalize and put in another part of my brain. I'm not thinking about the vast amount of hatred on a daily basis. And sometimes, I mean, there was a tweet even 2 or 3 days ago that I did in which I was effectively just revealing the detail that 11 civilians in Israel had been murdered in just over 8 or 9 days in the space of that amount of time at the hands of, fundamentalist Islamist terror. And I tweeted something about how they were the same people who believe from the river to the sea, Palestine should be free, or who bandy about those kinds of slogans and the sloganeering of Israel as an apartheid state, etc., etc. And I said, is this you? As in drawing a line in the sand of, are you still the people screaming these mantras and these, so-called social justice slogans who are in agreement with the fundamentalists who are killing innocent people in Israel right now? That tweet was quote tweeted about 500 or 600 times, and the most heinous, disgusting, anti-Semitic bile accompanying it of, good, or at least it should be more than 11 people or like that kind of nature of hate. And honestly, I didn't notice it until a friend of mine from the UK, who also deals with an immense amount of misogyny and Jew hate online, retweeted it and said something about how disgusted she was looking at all of the responses. I didn't even notice because I've had to go to a place where I kind of have a bit of a hit and run relationship with social media now. I just tweet something and go, because I don't believe that there is any value in engaging with trolling or haters. There is value in dialogue, but unfortunately what we see in the realm of social media is that there is so little opportunity to have any meaningful dialogue, and especially on the public feed. In private DMs, it might be different, but there really is such little scope, and people are terrified of having dialogue about hot issues like this in public because they're terrified of looking like an idiot, of appearing ignorant, and they don't want to get caught up in something. They don't want to slip up. They don't want to be associated with someone like me who attracts a lot of hate, and then they get drowned by the whack-a-mole maggot verse of all of the trolls that will then attack their account and make their account not usable. So really, in terms of how I deal with trolling, I've had to sort of put it in a box and forget about it for now. And I'm not saying that there's never a day in which my hate name is trending when it doesn't get a little bit scary for 5 minutes, but really I'm still I was reared in the media industry, and I am very much of the opinion that all press is good, like good press. There's no such thing, because if people are making a noise about you and they're doing it in a negative way, it means you're doing something right. If you believe what you're doing is correct, you're doing something right, because you're antagonizing people, you're provoking people, you're courageously provoking change. You're trying to redirect or insert a new idea into a stale, comfortable echo chamber. And of course, you're going to be met with this resilience. And I mean, it's not even a resilience. You have to be resilient against this retaliation that happens. So, for me, I see a value in being on social media and advocating because it has been a place in which we've been able to grow a community, and we've been able to meet each other, like-minded people with the same messaging, have been able to meet each other and bolster each other's messages and galvanize the truth. And, what we see is that mainstream media is so much harder to control and has become this really tragic, commercial media has become this really tragic forum for mass disinformation and untruth and bent narratives. We saw that at its peak during the war between Israel and Hamas last May. We saw just how betrayed we've been by corporate media. Social media is the kind of vigilante Wild West forum where Jewish people who have the guile, and not even necessarily Jewish people, but Jewish people and Zionist allies have the guile to be able to, dispel those narratives and put up a bit of a fight. And I think there is an immense value in that kind of retaliation and creating an audience, garnering a community there that can feel seen and heard and can be gifted with the verbiage required for them to have offline in their private spaces, in their conversations with their employer or their partner or their friends at the tennis club, whatever it is. I think that I think the benefit. I'm going to say I think the benefit outweighs the cost. But maybe ask me on a different day, and I'll have another response to that.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Let's bring it a little more local for us, and that is, you obviously have a unique perspective. Growing up as a Scottish Jewish person, you come to the U.S. after your studies. What's your impression of American colleges and universities in regards to kind of what we're seeing with anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism? I'm curious what your perspective is on it as someone who has not grown up here and has not necessarily experienced it firsthand or anything like that.
Well, actually, I have spent a semester on a US college campus. When I was 20, I was in law school at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, and I was involved in the Jewish community on campus. And I remembered it being extremely progressive and quite alien to me as a European Jew, but I was and one that grew up in an Orthodox adjacent environment. But I was very happy that it existed, and I felt like I was able to continue having some semblance of Jewish life while I was on campus. I wasn't paying too much attention to it. And I remember, comparatively to my experience at Manchester University in the UK, there was less accusations of me as a Jew cornered in the pub on a Friday night and, with a friend who's trying to be amicable, but is also playing sport with the Jew and asking, well, are you really team Israel when it comes to Israel-Palestine? Explain that to me. How can you, that would be the kind of the sporting of friends and peers at Manchester University in the pub, because that was the culture in the UK, and that was a culture steeped in academia from the 80s onwards. And BDS was in its nascence. I went to university between 2004 and 2007, so around 2002 is when we saw the seeds of BDS being formed, and it was starting to trickle into academic spaces while I was, was becoming a bit more rife while I was at university. And comparative to that, I didn't feel going to UNC for 6 months actually felt like a bit of respite from that, because I wasn't meeting any of that kind of dialogue there. And fast forward to now, and obviously I'm not at a university in the US. I I have given, as a music journalist, I've been invited on a number of occasions to lecture at American universities, but I don't have a day-to-day experience of what it would be like to actively be visibly Jewish on campus or to be known as Jewish on campus. All I know is that, I'm limited to what I read and understand of how alienating. I think the time that I became most aware of the vastness of this problem, it's like an epidemic truly throughout American universities, was when Jewish on Campus started their Instagram account. And for anyone listening who is unaware of Jewish on Campus, they started an Instagram account in the middle of the pandemic, and every single post was just an anonymous testimonial from a student at a particular named university throughout the States with a testimony about an incident that happened at their university that was anti-Semitic. And it was testimonial after testimonial, day after day after day, and all over this country. And it completely tore my soul into, it totally broke my heart. But what I think Jewish on Campus did was urge an awareness and a conversation that I really think that work that they did with that Instagram page, and I know it's since they have taken off and they're, collaborating here, there, and everywhere, and amazing things have happened for them. But what they did in that grassroots moment right at the beginning was totally punk, actually. They shoved a problem in people's faces that everyone was ignoring, and drastically pioneered a conversation around this that, suffice to say, I'm sure these problems have existed for years at American universities, but they were allowed to fester, and they were allowed to get to this horrific point in which it's almost expected, in my understanding, it's almost expected that every campus experience in America is an anti-Zionist campus experience. And that's, for a country in which Jewish people are supposed to have the greatest assimilation rate in throughout the diaspora, and the most Jews represented in all of the diaspora, that's a really, really frightening reality.
Agreed. It is. We actually we have worked in the past with Jewish on Campus many times. So we did a survey that we came out with last summer in partnership with them that really kind of shed light on what students and current students and recent alumni have experienced on campus. It was quite eye-opening.
Yeah.
And to that end, why do you think why do you think so many colleges and universities here have become hostile to the Jewish experience, or to the Jews, or to pro-Israel, the Zionists, what have you? Why do you think that is? Do you think it's partially coming from like the left? Do you think it's? I'm just curious, like what your thoughts are on it. Why you think it's happening more in a more pronounced way than before?
I think that there have been. I think that seeds were sown during the Soviet era. And a lot of this is a repeat of Soviet anti-Zionism that has been institutionalized in this country, and that has not actually been fully exposed and seen until this moment, where it has been given new life by a lot of the ideology and the politic in progressivism right now, that has, the social justice movements that have become hugely popularized in this country, particularly in elitist and academic circles. I think that it has breathed new life into a lot of the Soviet anti-Zionism that's been incorporated into educational syllabuses in this country. I mean, one of the things that was most shocking to me when I first started talking about Zionism in a major way to an American audience, because I'd been doing it for years around Corbynism, but I think that Americans really just hadn't been paying attention, as Americans tend not to do when it's not something concerning America. So people were sort of ignoring the fact that I was this music journalist doing this, that, and the other, and I was having this whole conversation on Twitter about this man named Corbyn and this Z word. But whatever. Like we don't really we can just ignore that. And then when the conversation began here in earnest, I had a phone call from somebody who I used to be incredibly close with, a former best friend of mine, who said, but I don't understand, because when I was in college and I was in my African diaspora class, or whatever she was talking about, at USC, I had a Jewish lecturer who was teaching me that Zionism is a colonial, is historically a colonial effort, and the land was stolen from the Palestinians, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We know this false narrative. And to me, I was shocked to find out that it is so institutionalized and entrenched in higher education in this that has not happened overnight. We know that's not happened overnight.
Right.
This has been taught in American institutions for decades. It's left over from the 70s and 80s, and it has, as I've said, because critical race theory and all of these progressive movements have come back into fashion, it has given air to these really backwards narratives that are sitting still in these academic institutions and being taught without challenge, without question, and being taught by members of our own tribe. It's mind-blowing that this is happening.
Agreed. It's a pernicious issue that unfortunately has not gone away. And anti-Semitism is one of the oldest forms of hatred. And I'm curious what your thoughts are, and what is the answer for Jews with rising like anti-Semitism? How should we react? Maybe you can give us some examples of how you've reacted, maybe on your different social media channels with anti-Semitism. Obviously, I know you kind of put your earplugs in and ignore it sometimes when you write some things. But I'm curious. Is online advocacy effective? How do you react? What do you think we should be doing with rising anti-Semitism?
I do think online advocacy is effective, but it's not for everyone. And I really, really want to make that message clear. It is really not for everyone. You have to have a warrior mindset when you're existing on social media, and you have to have a tight-knit community. You have to have people that are going to teach you how to fight back, teach you how to deal with trolling, teach you also how to be, how to have the most efficacy with the space that you're afforded in a tweet. And these are all skills that you have to hone as though you were a soldier in battle. And, I'm not being hysterical about that. You'll be bludgeoned out there. It's not for everyone. I would say the most important thing really is more internal work. Yes, we do need to do this external work, and we need to come up with a strategy to dispel these false narratives, and also to get more people to care about the rife nature of anti-Semitism in this country right now, because it's so much of the pain that is expressed to me in my DMs or in conversations I have over, Shabbat salons or, events I go to, is why does nobody talk about everything that's happening to us? Why is it not being reported? That's a lot of the pain. So yes, we do need to do the external work of being bold enough to have these conversations in our immediate circles, in bigger circles, in places in which we represent something else, perhaps. I've been working so much behind the scenes with people in corporations, whether it's in the fashion world, in the music world, in, kind of like less artistic worlds. I've had so many conversations with people who are boldly going to the heads of their departments and saying, hey, as part of DEI here, I really want to have a conversation about anti-Semitism in America right now. And, some of them get far with that and some of them don't. But it's important, even I think, for yourself, your own self-respect and your own love for yourself, to be able to stand up and have the courage to do that. But really, I think what everyone can achieve before having any of the external conversations is the internal work. And it might, it's not necessarily very fair that we have to do this, because we all have busy lives. We all have passions that exist outside of being Jewish. And, we deserve to live as freely as and happily as anyone else. But the fact of the matter is that if you are affected and you are worried, the best thing that you can do is equip yourself with knowledge. Buy the books, study, read up. Certainly if you're going to speak out, you need to go away and study for a while, because people have a wealth of misinformation that they're going to start pelleting at you, and you're going to suddenly freeze the first time you hear all of these, numbers about the Nakba, or about the numbers that would suggest that there aren't as many, that Arab populism is not increasing in the Middle East right now and is in fact decreasing or something, false genocide narratives but these facts will be lobbed at you in order to intimidate you and get you to shut up, because suddenly now you're almost in a court of law, and you're arguing with experts, with academics about propaganda. And we all know that you can't argue propaganda because it's conspiracy and it's not real. The best way to deal with it is to arm yourself with knowledge, and having the knowledge will actually make you feel, well, I mean, certainly from my experience, it makes you feel a lot more confident about going out in the world and having difficult conversations, because even the air of speaking with knowledge, with confidence, lends you power in a diatribe. And when you're dialoguing with people who are ignorant, they will immediately realize, hopefully, unless they're purely hateful and they're just beating on you because you're a Jew, any reasonable person who actually wants to engage in dialogue is going to soon realize that you do know what you're talking about, and they can learn from you. And perhaps in an intellectual way, they might be interested in pursuing the brand, if you like, of knowledge that you have. And there's also another piece where, beyond just empowering ourselves with knowledge, it's just feeling proud to be Jewish, and feeling closer to your community and closer to a tribe, a family of friends. And whether they're Jewish or not, the people in your life you can start sharing your customs with, you can start telling the story of your family and where you came from. Equip yourself with that kind of information. Because
how did you equip yourself when you decided I'm going to dive in on the anti-Semitism kind of issues that I'm seeing? What kind of internal work did you do that was helpful? I think that having these conversations, let's say on the campus of these different propagandas, like you said, we're going to throw out numbers. It's a lot. It's not always helpful to throw back numbers. It's an emotional conversation that 80% of the community on campus has absolutely no idea what the hell you're talking about and doesn't care about those numbers. But I'm curious what types of things maybe you've done that you found helpful for yourself, that maybe others could comparably do.
Yeah, well, what I've done so many things. I mean, when I started advocating against Corbyn, I quickly got into, I had those panic moments of suddenly all of these trolls just landing on my tweets and pelting these anomaly facts at me and I would go to an expert. I'm fortunate that I'm well connected in the community, and I had people I could ask, and I would just throw something at someone and say, this can't be right. And the person completely validated me, and no, but this is what this is how this goes. This is reversing, the prove it crowd of, oh, here's a fact, prove it. Okay, well, I'm going to give you this fact, just prove this fact, and you get into that, and you're right, it's exhausting. And for you're emotional, they're not emotional, they're playing a sport. So really, what you're just trying to do is whittle you down until you're so enraged that you show yourself up as the mad ethnic cleansing fan that they're telling you that you are in the first place. So, I did a number of things. After that started happening, I went away and I started studying, and I read any and every book I could get my hands on. And I really, I really dove deep, not just into the history of Israel and, Israel-Palestine, but also just understanding anti-Semitism, because you can't you can't understand the geopolitical history if you don't have the foundational building blocks of what is anti-Semitism, where does it span from, how old is it, what are all of the iterations through the generations, what are the different types of tropes, and how have they reinvented themselves as time has gone on. That's when you can begin to understand, for instance, that when there's an accusation being made that Israel was responsible for teaching American cops how to use the tactic that wound up killing George Floyd, then you can actually point to your knowledge about anti-Semitic tropes and realize that that's a blood libel. And you're equipped with the intellect that allows you to be faster in response and to recognize exactly what's happening, because we know that anti-Semitism is a very unique form of hate and that it mutates over and over again. It's very clever. and it's almost like when you meet a narcissist and you're in this kind of war of trying to get ahead of the narcissist, and it's so difficult. Anti-Semitism is kind of like the narcissist of hatred, and you have to keep trying to get one up on this beast that is so attractive to everyone else and so sexy and popular and appealing, and keeps becoming so generation after generation. And Jews are always scurrying around trying to be heard, trying to convince people, no, this is the thing again, don't do this. But yeah, I did the academic research, but the most important thing I did was build the community, find the people online that I wanted to follow and start dialoguing with them. And honestly, a lot of this work is really a great honor in my life doing this, even though it comes with a lot of hate. But one of the most amazing things is that I've genuinely met people that I love and adore doing this work, and they will make you feel 10 feet tall when you do wind up losing a lot of the people that you never thought you would lose in your life, or you wind up losing work opportunities, or you find yourself suddenly on the outside looking in. These people that you will meet, that you're rooting a relationship with in the deepest part of your identity, they become invaluable to you.
For sure. You brought up some interesting points, like George Floyd with police and whatnot. We see that a lot on campuses. They call it, the anti-Israel movement calls it the deadly exchange program, where, let's say campus police, maybe they're state police that work on campus. They go to Israel, they learn different tactics of how to, harshly deal with their subjects. Let's go to their victims, let's call it. And it's something that's very real and very applicable to what's happening on campuses today, for sure. And so I think your point is really well received there. And we only have a few minutes left, but I'd love to, can you tell us what you think alumni, we're alumnus for campus fairness. We're here to activate alumni to help counter anti-Semitism and anti-Israel rhetoric on campuses. Alumni are a previously untapped resource. We are really the first and only organization to bring alumni kind of under one roof, working through different chapters, so through different alma maters to create change on campus, and it's been working. We've seen different instances of us bringing to light to administrations about what's going on. But what do you think alumni can do to help improve the campus climate, after they graduate?
I think it's about connecting. It's about connecting all of these campuses, because everyone is dealing with the same problem, and it's frankly, it's the genius move on the side of BDS to create iterants after iterants of the same thing in all of these small communities, and therefore exhaust and drown out the energy of all of those communities trying to fight the same thing. I think the best way to deal with it is to that's the most amazing thing about having an organization like this, is that it unites people throughout American campuses who are having exactly the same problems, and figuring out ways in which to combat it in a streamlined way together, having the resources available, the educational resources, the information at the fingertips of of students who are dealing with this hate on a daily basis, that they feel confident that they can fight this back themselves as boots on the ground, but they also have the support of alumni that can come into colleges and come and speak to the students, come and help them strategize how to advocate for themselves, because they were there before. They have an emotional connection to that campus. They don't want to see this happen. Maybe they have experience of when it happened in their day and they can't believe it's still happening. I get a lot of messages about that. But also, I work with a number of organizations that are helping students fight back, whether it's with petitions that then get public attention by being proliferated on social media, or it's articles that are being written and mainly in Jewish press, but being pushed to mainstream media, TV spots, being pushed to TV spots on news outlets. We need to create more noise about what's going on, and the way to do that is by having more connection to each other, being able to organize events in which students from around the country can be represented and can rally or can speak at demonstrations and protests in major cities, major hotspots in America, so that there's more attention given to these issues, and so that the students who are dealing with it in their small silos, whether it's alone in their own dormitory or they're the only kid in their department in their school who is dealing with this, they feel connected to a much, much wider cause, and it's not just happening to them, and they don't feel like the one freak who's dealing with this thing. It's an unspeakably easier for us to be more connected to each other now as well, which kind of makes little excuses for why that didn't happen.
For sure. I think it's a challenge. We do a lot of petitions. Some of the work that we do is kind of by shedding light, by having hundreds, thousands of people sign different petitions. I mean, we have one going on right now at Princeton because there's BDS that's coming to town there. The students are voting on it. And, we have alumni, we have a base there, and it's important, I think, for our alumni to come and speak out. For those maybe wanting to, use their voice in a big or even a small way, maybe we can wrap up since we only have a couple minutes left on, what's your advice for someone who wants to maybe get started in becoming just more active within their own network, maybe within their own social media network? What are things that they can be doing to help kind of raise the profile and raise the voice of the pro-Israel community?
I think it's really important to figure out what your voice is. And this, by the way, goes way beyond even this conversation, but that's how to be successful at relaying a message. Figure out what your unique skill set is. Maybe you're someone who's extremely funny and you're really good at taking something very serious and distilling it down to something eye-grabbing and funny that makes people laugh. I'm saying this because I'm thinking of Jordan Tilchin, who is at jtilch on Instagram and Twitter, and who is an amazing advocate, an amazing Zionist. But she has this really unique way of taking extremely complicated hot issues and making a one-liner out of it and posting it, and it goes everywhere, or you could be someone closer to, a Ben Freeman, who is an educator, who'll be retorting with facts, with historical facts, and leaning on the more academic side of things. Or, you could be someone like me who's more fiery and looking for a scrap all the time. Or you could be someone like, I think it's Oi Vayhem or something. It's an Instagram account that makes incredible that takes all of the popular memes of the day and turns them into Zionist memes. So people have different skill sets. And I think it's about identifying what yours is and how you can make your voice unique. Otherwise, you're just going to get drowned out in the parroting and the sort of the chorus line of everyone else online. If you really want to make an impact and you want to make a difference, find out how, play around with it and find your sort of unique USP, if you like, in all of this, and get creative with it, because if anything else, this is a really, really depressing thing. It's a depressing subject matter. It's a depressing fight to be in. A lot of the days are really hard and difficult. If you can make it somehow, like, dare I say it, fun for yourself, then try and do that. Because, you know, despite everything that I experience every day, my alarm clock says, make sure you have fun today. Like, that's what it says on my iPhone. Like, try and have, you know, I just approach everything in life with that. I'm always trying, despite whatever tragedy, to have some fun every day. So see what you can do with it that makes it something enjoyable for you, because if it's enjoyable for you, the chances are you're going to be better at it, and it's going to be efficient, and it will reach people.
Fabulous. That's really good advice. And having fun is important, or maybe even, you know, we do serious work, but it's important to also have some levity and understanding the different nuances and having a little fun with it as well. So, Eve, thank you. I think we're out of time. I wanted to thank you for your participation, for your wisdom, your knowledge. We will definitely be seeing you on Twitter and Instagram, I'm sure. And we really want to thank you for being our keynote speaker at our conference. So thank you very much. And for those who want to follow Eve, what are your handles? Maybe you can share quickly.
Yeah, my handle on Instagram is Eve Barlow without an underscore, and on Twitter it's Eve_Barlow. And I also have a brand new Substack called Blacklisted that you can subscribe to at Substack. The links are in my bios on Twitter and Instagram, and it's a really incredible way of supporting my work and making sure that I'm funded and can still do this. And you get to read my newsletter, so you know it's a double win.
There you go. Well, thank you, Eve, for your time, and we will be in touch soon, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abby.
So thank you all. That concludes our conference for today. It was only a few hours, but I think and I hope that you all learned as much as I did from our partners, from our lay leaders, from our thought leaders, from Eve. It's really been a challenging year, I think, for all of us. At the same time, I think we have a lot of opportunity here. Alumni have never been galvanized in such a way before. And I think that we're all getting more tools in our toolbox in order to really stem this rising tide of anti-Semitism. Students can do a lot. Alumni can do even more, from understanding how and where to donate to your alma maters in an appropriate manner so that it's not being used and abused, to understanding how to sign your name on a petition and sharing it with your network so that hundreds, if not thousands of people are joining. We've had some phenomenal achievements throughout the year, from our survey, like I mentioned a few times, to a letter of Congress from Congress penned by Congressman Ted Lieu, who used us as really a talking point for understanding what the issue is with anti-Semitism on campuses today. We hope that this will be a springboard for some other in-person, God willing, in-person regional seminars we will have coming up in the future throughout the rest of the year. We're hoping to have some regional seminars where we're going to bring ourselves to you, where we can all convene together in smaller communities to learn from some of our other interlocutors and our other partners, and also meeting one another as a community. We're incredibly thankful for all of you for being with us, for partnering with us, and we hope that you will continue to engage, whether it be through webinars, whether it be through signing your name on a petition or letter writing, whether it be just reaching out and seeing what you can do to help. Really, this is an all hands on deck kind of conversation and thing that we need help from everyone. And we thank you for your continued support. Thank you all. And this officially concludes our 2022 ACF National Conference. Have a great rest of your Sunday afternoon and evening. And we look forward to working with you again soon. Thank you.